Chapter 6. The harsh sun beat down relentlessly, its rays slicing through the toxic haze that perpetually shrouded the wasteland. One day had passed since I fled the ruins of my former life, each step carrying me deeper into the desolate expanse of twisted metal and crumbling concrete. The landscape stretched endlessly in every direction, a wasteland painted in hues of rust and ash. My throat burned with each breath, the air thick with particulates and the acrid stench of decay. Sweat trickled down my back, soaking through the rough fabric of my scavenged clothing. The weight of my backpack, laden with meager supplies, pressed down on my shoulders, a constant reminder of my precarious situation. No clear plan guided my steps beyond the primal instinct to stay hidden. Mother's teachings echoed in my mind, a lifeline in this harsh new reality. Her voice, stern yet caring, seemed to whisper warnings with each gust of toxic wind.
Watch for signs of burrowing predators,
I muttered to myself, scanning the ground for telltale mounds or disturbed earth.
Avoid the shimmer of heat mirages, they often mask sinkholes.
The wasteland's silence was occasionally broken by distant howls, wild dogs, once man's companions, now warped by radiation into vicious hunters. Their cries sent involuntary shivers down my spine, my hand instinctively tightening around the hilt of my short sword. As the second day of wandering dawned, the monotony of destruction was broken by an unexpected sight. A mutated cactus rose from the barren earth, its yellowish-green form a beacon of hope amidst the desolation. These plants were renowned among wasteland travelers for their ability to filter even the most toxic rainwater into something drinkable. Approaching cautiously, I recalled Mother's warnings about its defense mechanisms. The cactus's thorns weren't just sharp, they carried a potent neurotoxin. Even a slight prick could cause excruciating pain and temporary blindness. The plant's skin glistened with an oily sheen, a visual reminder of its dangerous nature. With painstaking care, I used my short sword to cleave away the most dangerous clusters of spines. The blade's edge caught the sunlight as it sliced through the air, each cut precise and deliberate. Beads of toxic sap oozed from the wounds I inflicted on the plant, their pungent odor stinging my nostrils. Once I'd cleared a relatively safe area, I plunged my blade into the base of the cactus. The satisfying sound of splitting plant flesh was followed by a trickle, then a steady stream of clear, clean water. Quickly, I filled my canteen and other containers, the cool liquid a promise of survival in this unforgiving landscape. Using Mother's kitchen knife, now one of my most prized possessions, I carefully cut away sections of the cactus's flesh. The pale, fibrous pulp was edible and far more nutritious than most of the food available in the outer markets of Section Z City. As I worked, the knife's familiar weight in my hand brought a flood of memories. Mother using it to prepare our meager meals, teaching me the intricacies of wasteland survival. I wrapped the cactus pieces in clean cloth and stored them in my backpack, a welcome addition to my supplies. The scent of the freshly cut plant lingered on my hands, a strange mix of earthiness and something almost metallic, a reminder of how radiation had altered even the most basic forms of life. As I continued my journey, the cactus silhouette slowly disappeared behind me. Its discovery had been a small victory, but I knew better than to let my guard down. In the wasteland, moments of respite were fleeting, and danger lurked around every pile of rubble. The sun climbed higher, its heat intensifying. Mirages shimmered on the horizon, distorting the already alien landscape. I trudged on, each step a defiance against the hostile environment. The toxic sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in an eerie, multi-hued glow. Streaks of sickly green and unnatural purple stretched across the darkening expanse, a nightly reminder of our world's altered state. The temperature began to drop rapidly, the day's oppressive heat giving way to a bone-chilling cold. I knew it was time to find shelter. The wasteland's dangers multiplied after dark, with nocturnal predators emerging from their lairs to hunt. My eyes, strained from a day of constant vigilance, scanned the surroundings for a defensible position. An overturned transport vehicle caught my attention, its rusted bulk partially buried in a mound of rubble. The acrid smell of corroded metal and old oil filled my nostrils as I approached. Its massive frame would provide cover on three sides, leaving me only one direction to watch. Carefully, I inspected the wreck for signs of current inhabitants. My fingers traced the edges of claw marks scored into the metal, long dried bloodstains telling a silent story of some past violence. Satisfied it was empty, I set about creating a basic alarm system. Using scavenged string and some empty cans filled with pebbles, I created a perimeter that would rattle noisily if anything large tried to approach. The soft clink of metal on metal as I worked seemed unnaturally loud in the growing darkness. As I settled in for the night, my back pressed against the cool metal of the vehicle. The reality of my situation pressed down on me. The ache of Mother's loss, a constant companion, seemed to intensify with the falling darkness. I could almost hear her voice reminding me to stay alert, to trust no one but myself. Sleep came fitfully, interrupted by the sounds of the wasteland night. The skittering of mutated insects echoed through the wreckage, their chitinous bodies scraping against metal and stone. Wind moaned through abandoned structures, a mournful sound that seemed to carry the ghosts of the old world. Once a blood-curdling shriek pierced the night, so close it jolted me fully awake. My hand gripped the hilt of my sword, knuckles white with tension as I strained to hear any approach. Whatever had made that sound seemed to move on, but sleep eluded me for hours afterward. On the second night, my precautions proved their worth. The clattering of my makeshift alarm yanked me from a restless slumber. In the dim starlight, I made out the form of a creature stalking toward me. Its movement was low and predatory, resembling a jackal, but twisted by radiation. Multiple eyes gleamed in the darkness, and patchy fur failed to cover skin mottled with cancerous growths. I scrambled to my feet, short sword in hand. The blade felt slick in my sweaty palm. "Back off!" I growled, trying to make myself appear larger. My voice sounded hoarse and foreign to my own ears, raw from disuse. The creature snarled in response, revealing rows of needle-sharp teeth. A wave of its fetid breath washed over me, carrying the stench of decay and sickness. It was clearly desperate, driven to take risks by hunger. For a moment, we stood locked in a standoff, neither willing to make the first move. Then it lunged, a blur of matted fur and gnashing teeth. I met its charge with a swipe of my blade, the metal singing through the air. A spray of hot blood hit my face as the sword opened a gash along the mutant's flank. The creature yelped in pain and surprise, clearly not used to prey that fought back so effectively. It circled me warily, leaving a trail of dark blood on the dusty ground. Its multiple eyes blinked independently, never all closing at once, always keeping me in sight. I could see the calculations running through its mutated brain, weighing the potential meal against the unexpected danger.
Come on then.
I taunted, my voice steadier than I felt. The surge of adrenaline sharpened my senses, making every detail of the confrontation stand out in stark relief.
I'm not easy meat.
After a few more feints and swipes, the jackal seemed to decide I wasn't worth the effort. With a final snarl of frustration, it slunk back into the darkness, leaving me alone with the pounding of my heart and the stink of its blood on my blade. I remained on high alert for the rest of the night, muscles tense and ears straining for any sound of the creature's return. But no further threats materialized. As the first hints of dawn began to lighten the sky, I allowed myself to relax slightly, exhausted but alive. The third day of my aimless wandering dawned with a sickly light filtering through the perpetual haze. As I rose from my makeshift shelter, muscles aching from nights spent on unyielding ground, a realization began to settle over me like the ever-present dust of the wasteland. I couldn't keep this up indefinitely. My supplies, while carefully rationed, felt lighter with each passing day. The water from the mutated cactus had been a godsend, but it wouldn't last forever. More pressingly, the gnawing emptiness in my gut reminded me that food was becoming scarce. Stepping out from the shadow of the overturned transport, I surveyed the desolate landscape. The horizon shimmered with heat mirages, distorting the already alien terrain. In the distance, the skeletal remains of once towering structures clawed at the sky, a grim reminder of the world that was lost. As I chewed on a strip of tough, radiation-preserved meat, my meager breakfast, a more visceral hunger gnawed at me, not for food, but for answers. I was no closer to uncovering the truth about Mother's past or the mysterious fruit that had brought such chaos into our lives. The memory of the fruit's sweet scent and miraculous effects lingered in my mind, as vivid as the day I first discovered it. Its glow seemed to taunt me from the recesses of my memory, holding secrets just beyond my grasp. I needed information, resources, and ultimately, a purpose beyond mere survival. As much as it pained me to admit it, that meant heading back toward civilization, or what passed for it in this broken world. My gaze drifted to the distant silhouette of crumbling skyscrapers that marked the old city, the place where I had discovered the underground chamber and the glowing tree. It called to me, a siren song of danger and potential revelation. Perhaps there, in the depths of those ruins, I might find answers to the questions that burned inside me. As I turned my steps back toward that ominous skyline, I began to formulate a plan. My previous venture had been reckless, fueled by desperation and naive hope. This time would be different. I couldn't risk drawing attention the way I had before. One
Sail.
I muttered to myself as I walked, my voice rough from disuse.
Then move on. No settling, no trusting anyone.
The words felt harsh in my mouth, a far cry from the life Mother and I had built together. But that life was gone now, shattered by forces I still didn't fully understand. If I was going to survive long enough to uncover the truth, I needed to adapt, to become as hard and unyielding as the wasteland itself. As I drew closer to the outskirts of the old city, a familiar tingling sensation began to creep over my skin. It started as a subtle prickling, like static electricity, but grew more intense with each step. I had felt it before, on my first venture into these ruins, but had dismissed it in the excitement of my discovery. Now, with the knowledge gained from the market vendor, I understood its significance. This was a
red zone,
an area of intense radiation that should be lethal to any normal human. Yet here I was, walking through it with no more discomfort than a slight buzzing sensation across my skin. I paused, looking down at my hands. The skin there seemed to shimmer faintly, almost glowing in response to the invisible radiation saturating the air. It was yet another mystery to add to the growing list of questions about my own nature.
Why am I different?
I asked the empty air, not expecting an answer. The wind carried my words away, swallowing them in the vastness of the wasteland.
What did you hide from me, Mother?
Before venturing deeper into the city, I knew I needed to be better prepared. My short sword, while effective, limited me to close-quarters combat. If I encountered anything truly dangerous, and in this place that seemed inevitable, such a limitation could prove fatal. Scouting the perimeter of the ruins, I kept my eyes peeled for anything I could use to extend my reach. The ground was littered with debris, shards of concrete, twisted rebar, and the occasional glint of something more promising. Each step crunched under my boots, a mixture of gravel and pulverized glass that seemed to cover everything. After about an hour of careful searching, I came across a partially collapsed chain-link fence. Most of it had melted into useless slag, likely from the intense heat of whatever cataclysm had reshaped this world. But some of the support poles remained intact, jutting out of the ground like the ribs of some long-dead giant. I approached cautiously, wary of any sharp edges or hidden dangers. The metal was warm to the touch, still holding the day's heat. Rust flaked off under my fingers as I tested each pole for stability. Finally, I found one that seemed sturdy enough for my purposes. With a grunt of effort, I worked the pole free from the ground. It came loose with a screech of protesting metal that set my teeth on edge. I froze, scanning the area for any signs that the noise had attracted unwanted attention. But only the wind answered, whistling through the empty streets. The pole was about 7 feet long, an ideal length for a makeshift spear. Its weight felt reassuring in my hands, a promise of increased reach and defensive capability. But a blunt instrument alone wouldn't be enough. Using salvaged wire and the expertise gained from years of scavenging, I set about lashing Mother's kitchen knife to the end of the pole. The blade, while not designed for this purpose, was sharp and durable. It had served her well in life. Now it would serve me in my quest for answers. As I worked, memories of Mother flooded back. Her hands always steady, showing me how to tie knots that would hold under pressure. Her voice, patient but firm, explaining the importance of weapon maintenance. "A dull blade is more dangerous to you than your enemy," she'd often say. The process of creating the spear was meditative, allowing my mind to wander even as my hands stayed busy. I spent some time practicing with my new weapon, getting a feel for its reach and balance. The extra length would give me a significant advantage against most of the mutated wildlife I was likely to encounter. Sweat beaded on my brow as I moved through basic forms Mother had taught me, adapting them to the spear's longer reach. The weapon felt like an extension of myself, its movements fluid and natural.
This'll do.
I nodded, satisfied with my handiwork. The spear wasn't pretty, but it was functional. In the Wasteland, that was all that mattered. With my new weapon in hand, I felt more confident about entering the depths of the old city. But as I stood on the threshold of the ruins, staring down debris-choked streets that had once bustled with life, a wave of emotions washed over me. This place, for all its dangers, was the last link I had to Mother and the life we'd shared. It was where everything had changed, where I'd found the fruit that had brought us hope and then tragedy. Coming back felt like tempting fate, but I knew I had no choice. The wind picked up, carrying the acrid scent of decay and something else, a faint, sweet aroma that I recognized instantly. It was the smell of the fruit, barely perceptible but unmistakable. My grip tightened on the spear, resolve hardening within me.
I'm going to find answers.
I promised the silent buildings around me, my voice barely above a whisper.
Whatever it takes.
Navigating the ruined city was a tense affair. Every step echoed off crumbling walls, the sound seeming to amplify in the eerie stillness. I moved from cover to cover, using abandoned vehicles and piles of rubble to conceal my presence. The spear in my hand was a constant comfort, its weight a reminder of my improved readiness. The air grew thicker as I ventured deeper into the city's heart. A fine, gritty dust coated everything, disturbed by my passage and swirling in eddies around my feet. It carried the metallic tang of radiation, mixed with the musty scent of decay. Each breath felt heavy, laden with particles I tried not to think about. Every sound set my nerves on edge. The skittering of mutant rats across broken concrete, the creak and groan of weakened structures settling. Once, a sudden crash in a nearby building sent me diving for cover, heart pounding. But it was just a section of flooring giving way, not the threat I'd feared. It took longer than expected to find the alley that led to the underground chamber. The city's layout, already confused by decades of decay, seemed to shift and change in my memory. More than once, I found myself in dead ends or unfamiliar streets, forcing me to backtrack and reorient myself. Frustration gnawed at me as I retraced my steps yet again.
Think.
I muttered to myself, scanning the skyline for familiar landmarks.
What did Mother always say about navigation?
The memory of her voice came back to me, clear as if she were standing beside me.
Look up, Darius offspring. The tall structures endure. They can guide you when all else fails.
Following her advice, I spotted a tilting skyscraper I recognized. Its upper floors were gone, sheared off by some long-ago catastrophe, but the remaining structure was distinctive enough to serve as a beacon. With renewed determination, I adjusted my course. Finally, after what felt like hours of careful navigation, I stood before the familiar manhole cover. It lay undisturbed, looking exactly as it had when I'd last emerged from the depths below. The metal was warm to the touch, heated by the day's unrelenting sun. Taking a deep breath, I pried it open and peered into the darkness. The underground tunnel stretched out before me, disappearing into inky blackness. The air that wafted up was damp and carried a faint, sweet scent that I now associated with the glowing tree and its fruit. It was stronger than I remembered, almost cloying in its intensity. With my spear at the ready, I descended into the tunnel. The darkness pressed in around me, a tangible presence that seemed to swallow the light. Patches of bioluminescent fungi clung to the damp walls, their soft, otherworldly glow casting strange shadows as I moved. The fungi's light pulsed gently, almost like a heartbeat, giving the tunnel an unsettling, living quality. I hadn't gone far when I heard the first chittering sounds. The eyeless, mole-like creatures that inhabited these tunnels were on the move. Unlike my last frantic journey through this place, I was prepared this time. As the first wave of mutant rodents surged toward me, I braced myself. Their pale, hairless bodies gleamed in the fungi's light, sharp teeth bared in mindless hunger. The spear proved its worth immediately. With its longer reach, I was able to dispatch the creatures before they could get close enough to bite or claw at me.
Too slow,
I muttered, surprising myself with a grim smile as another rat fell to my weapon. The sound of their bodies hitting the tunnel floor was oddly satisfying, a validation of my improved skills and preparation. As I progressed deeper into the tunnels, I began to feel a familiar vibration in the air. It was subtle at first, more of a sensation than a sound, but it grew stronger with each step. The tree was calling, its strange energy pulsing through the very stone around me. It thrummed through my body, a siren song of power and mystery. Finally, I emerged into the vast chamber that housed the glowing tree. Its ethereal light filled the space, casting rippling shadows on the curved walls. The tree itself seemed larger than I remembered, its branches reaching higher and spread wider. The fruits hung heavy on its boughs, their pulsing glow hypnotic and alluring. For a moment, I stood transfixed by the sight. Then, shaking off the tree's hypnotic effect, I forced myself to focus on my surroundings. My eyes were drawn to the far side of the chamber, where I remembered seeing the new people disappear down a side passage.
No time like the present.
I said to myself, gripping my spear tightly. The sound of my voice, though quiet, seemed to reverberate through the chamber, a reminder of how small and insignificant I was in this alien place. As I made my way towards that unexplored tunnel, a part of me knew I should just grab one of the glowing fruits and leave. But a stronger part, the part that demanded answers and justice for Mother, pushed me forward. The unknown passage yawned before me, dark and foreboding. Whatever lay down that dark passage, I was determined to face it. For better or worse, my journey for truth was just beginning. With one last look at the glowing tree, I stepped into the shadows, my spear held high and my resolve unshaken.
Bold heart keep rising through the dark, through the fight. Stand tall, shine your eyes. Faces lost, you'll never know. Silent tears, courage high, pushing to reach the sky. Under the sun, through the midnight glow, faces lost will never know. Silent tears, courage high, pushing to reach the sky.